My name is Nadia Osei, and I am 32 years old. 4 years ago, my stepfather stood in the doorway of my mother's house and told me, very calmly, that I had 30 days to find somewhere else to live. He said the house was being restructured. That was his word, restructured. I nodded. I said I understood. What he didn't know was that I had spent the previous 18 months working quietly with an estate attorney my mother's oldest friend had arranged. Someone no one in that house had ever heard of, holding documents no one in that house had ever seen. The morning after his 30-day deadline passed, he filed paperwork to transfer the property. It was rejected before noon. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to 6 years ago, to a small garden that smelled like jasmine and wet soil, when my mother said something I didn't fully understand until the day I chose not to fight back. I was 26 the year my mother got remarried. Her garden was the one place in the house that still felt like her. It smelled like jasmine in the evenings, and the soil after she watered it had a heaviness that settled something in my chest. She kept a pair of old cloth gloves hanging on a nail by the back door, soft from years of use, the fingertips permanently stained green. She was patient in a way I had never quite learned. She never rushed anything, not the plants, not conversations, not decisions. She'd sit with me on the back step some evenings while the light went golden, eating whatever she'd made from the kitchen with her hands, unhurried. One of those evenings, she looked at the garden for a long time before she spoke. "Nadia," she said quietly, "the hardest thing a strong person ever does is wait. Anyone can react. Waiting, real waiting, with a plan behind it, that takes everything you have." I was 26. I thought she was talking about gardening. My stepfather, Raymond, was different from the beginning. Not cruel in obvious ways, just consistently transactional. He smiled at the right moments. He used the word practical the way other men used the word kind. Small things told the truth. The way he talked over my mother in front of guests. The way he referred to the house as mine and your mother's, never ours, never hers. The way he looked at every room like he was calculating its resale value. I sensed it early. But I was 26, and I had no power, and I had no plan. I only had my mother's voice on a back step, telling me that waiting was the hardest thing. My mother was diagnosed 2 years into the marriage. She declined slowly, which was its own kind of cruelty, slow enough that Raymond had time to prepare. He hired an accountant the same month she began treatment. I found that out later. At the time, I only noticed that his conversations shifted, less about her comfort, more about getting things in order. 3 months after the diagnosis, I overheard him on the phone in the hallway outside the kitchen. "The property's in her name alone right now," he said. "We need to correct that before things get complicated. Just add mine quietly. It's cleaner." Cleaner. That's the word they use for everything that used to be love. Cleaner. Practical. Getting things in order. As if my mother's name on her own house were simply an administrative oversight to be fixed, I said nothing. I walked back to the garden and stood there until my breathing steadied. I filed every word away. I started visiting more. I handled her medications, her appointments, the small paperwork of a life that was becoming harder to manage alone. Raymond appreciated the help. It freed him to focus on what he called the bigger picture. I let him think that was what I was doing, helping. Family language changed after that. Raymond stopped saying, "when your mother's better," and started saying, "when things settle." Her oldest friends stopped being invited to the house. Her garden went unwatered on the weeks I didn't come. I understood something in those months. Raymond didn't see me as a threat. I was the grieving daughter, manageable, temporary. I decided to remain exactly that, until I wasn't. My mother's oldest friend, a woman named Mrs. Adeyemi, called me in the second year. Your mother asked me to give you something, she said. She asked me to wait until she couldn't ask you herself. Inside the envelope was a folded document and a handwritten note. 2 lines only. I started this the month before the wedding. I always knew, Mama. The document was a deed. My mother had placed the house in an irrevocable trust 18 months before she was diagnosed. Before the marriage, before Raymond's accountant, before any of it. She had named me as sole beneficiary. She had known. Mrs. Adeyemi had already arranged a meeting with an estate attorney named Mr. Okafor, a man my mother had worked with privately for years. The trust predates the marriage entirely, he explained, sliding the file toward me. Raymond has no legal claim to this property, not through the marriage, not through any document he could file, not now, not ever. Your mother closed that door before he ever walked through it. She had done it before the wedding, before the diagnosis, before any of it. My mother, patient, unhurried, sitting on that back step, had been planning longer than I ever knew. Mr. Okafor explained what Raymond had been doing. Quiet conversations with a title company, an informal appraisal arranged without my mother's knowledge, a transfer document being drafted, one he planned to present at the right moment, when grief made everything feel urgent and unavoidable. I overheard him confirm a timeline on the phone that same week. 30 days. He was going to move in 30 days. I sent Mr. Okafor 3 words that night. I am ready. That evening, Raymond made dinner and talked about the future with a confidence that belonged to someone who didn't know what I knew. I let him talk. Mr. Okafor laid it out with quiet clarity. The trust was airtight. My mother had signed it with 2 witnesses and a notary, with no clause that gave Raymond any standing, not as spouse, not as resident, not in any capacity. All I needed to do was formally register my role as successor trustee, which became effective the moment my mother could no longer manage her own affairs. Once that registration is filed, he said, any transfer Raymond attempts hits a wall he cannot see around. That week, Raymond tried something softer. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and spoke carefully about honoring your mother's wishes and keeping the family together. I just want us to handle this the right way, he said. Together. I looked at him for a long moment. I'll think about it, I said. He nodded slowly, certain he had managed me. My younger brother Kofi noticed something had changed, the way I had stopped reacting when Raymond spoke over me, the way I seemed almost calm in situations that would have broken me a year earlier. What's going on with you? He said one evening. You're different. I told him I was fine. I was not lying. I was simply already standing on the other side of something he couldn't see yet. The night before I filed the paperwork, I went to my mother's garden alone. The jasmine was still growing, slightly wild from weeks without her hands on it. I sat on the back step where we used to eat in the evenings, and I let myself feel all 4 years of it, the watching, the waiting, the smiling and nodding and filing things quietly away. I almost wanted to walk inside and tell Raymond everything, to watch his face. Then I remembered what she said. That waiting, real waiting, with a plan behind it, takes everything you have. I cried that night, not from weakness, from clarity. I wish this were different. I wish Raymond had been the kind of man who would have loved my mother instead of calculating around her. I wish he had simply been present instead of strategic. But wishes don't hold up. The trust does. It was 11:50 p.m. when I sat down at the small desk in my mother's spare room. Mr. Okafor joined the call exactly on time, his voice steady through the speaker. Ready when you are, Nadia. I signed each document slowly. The successor trustee registration, the formal notification to the title company, the legal confirmation that the house, the garden, and every account connected to my mother's estate were protected, had always been protected, under a trust Raymond had never known existed. Your mother was a very careful woman, Mr. Okafor said. She thought of everything long before she needed to. The clock on my screen moved to 12:03 a.m. I am 32. I am the registered trustee of everything Raymond spent 4 years assuming would eventually be his. And down the hallway, in the bedroom my mother used to fill with the smell of jasmine from the garden, Raymond was asleep, still planning a transfer that had already failed, still counting down 30 days that meant nothing at all.
He'll find that out in about 8 hours. Raymond came to the kitchen early, unhurried, certain of his timeline. He poured his coffee and then turned to me with the careful tone he used when he wanted something. "Nadia, I think it's time we sit down with the title company together. Make things clean." I looked at him, calm. "There's nothing to clean up. The property has been in trust for 6 years. It was never available to transfer." His phone rang 40 minutes later. I watched his face change expression 3 times in silence as the title company representative explained, politely, firmly, that every document he had submitted had been rejected, that the property was held in an irrevocable trust predating the marriage, and that there was no legal path forward. He looked at me like I was still the daughter who came by to water the garden and say nothing. I wasn't. I hadn't been for 4 years. He set his coffee cup down very carefully. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I went outside and watered the jasmine, the way my mother always did, slowly, without rushing, giving everything exactly what it needed. My mother used to say that the hardest thing a strong person ever does is wait, that anyone can react, but real waiting, with a plan behind it, takes everything you have. I always thought she was talking about patience as a virtue. She was talking about strategy as love. Raymond vacated the property within 60 days. He did not contest the trust. I don't believe he ever fully understood how long it had been in place. Mr. Okafor still manages the estate. He told me once that my mother had asked him, when she first signed the documents, to make sure I never had to fight loudly for what was already mine. As for me, I still live in that house. The jasmine my mother planted now covers the entire back fence. The cloth gloves still hang on the nail by the back door. I think about her every time I put them on. And I think, some people protect you long after they are no longer able to. You just have to be patient enough to let them. If you have ever had to wait, really wait, quietly, with everything inside you wanting to move, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments, and if this story moved you, subscribe. There are more to come.